thought overall pretty good performance the other night. Defensively, I was proud of the way our first team went out there. On the first drive, we were able to get a 3 and out. I thought it was a really good week. Overall, just work against a really good football team. I thought we found out a lot about our guys, and excited about another opportunity this week against another really good football team to go out there and continue to get better. So we're making progress. As I've said every week that I've stood up here, and we'll probably continue to say it throughout the remainder of the season, we still have, a lot of things that we have to work on, a lot of areas that we got to improve on, but we're certainly making some progress.
On Friday afternoon, what did you learn about your guys in that setting against that offense and that quarterback?
Well, I think the number one thing is that we belonged on that field with those guys, and I think that's good for the confidence of the group. We there was some back and forth going on, some mistakes that we made that we had to, go back and get corrected. And yet our guys made some plays too. I think we had 6 takeaways total in that whole, practice. And so I think the biggest thing I thought was, we made plays in that game or in that practice. So that was good to see.
Brisker was very active throughout that particular practice, but seemingly had a really good month. What have you learned about him in the time you've had him in camp?
Well, I think, look, the big thing, for me, I knew he'd be good close to the ball. I think the thing that's been impressive to me is what he's done away from the ball. Playing in whether it be the deep middle, deep quarter, deep half. He's had a lot of range back there. He's making plays on the football. So I think he's had an outstanding camp, and excited about the opportunity to work with him because I think he's primed for doing some good things for us.
Do you guys have any clarity on Terrell Smith?
Well, if we do, that's probably a question for Ben or Ryan or one of those guys. That's kind of that's above my pay grade right now.
Dennis, what's the experience been like getting to know Kevin Byard and working with him as you're trying to put in your defense?
Yeah. Well, look, he's an accomplished football player. He's really smart. He's played a lot of years in this league at a high level, and he's probably the leader of the defensive back room and one of the leaders of our team. And it's been good to see him step up in that role and take on that leadership responsibility. I think he understands what it takes to be successful in this league, and I think guys are falling in line with that.
How has it helped you as you try to teach this defense to a lot of guys that are pretty young, especially in the secondary?
Yeah.
Have a guy like him that has this library of information.
Yeah, I think anytime you have veteran players, they can help. Coaches sometimes speak in a language that doesn't necessarily resonate as much with the player at times, and so having a veteran player that can speak in terms of from a player's perspective. It helps clarify what we're trying to get accomplished as coaches, and so having guys that have the ability to do that, we have that at each level of our defense. Whether it be KB in the back end, TJ and Tremaine at the linebacker position, Grady at defensive line. I think we've got a lot of guys that have some experience that they're good role models for these young guys to follow.
On the inside of your D-line, between Grady, Jerron, and Billings, it seems like you kind of have 3 starters there for 2 spots, and I know you kind of mix and match all that, but how do you feel about your interior D-line depth right now?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. And I would put Chris Williams in that mix too. I think he's had a good camp. And so the thing about the defensive line position, it's probably the one position on defense where everybody plays, everybody's in the rotation. And I think the more quality depth that we can have at the defensive line position, keep 4 fresh bodies out there as much as we possibly can, that helps you when you get late in the game and in the fourth quarter. And in particular, you start defending these 2-minute drives, being able to keep fresh rushers on the field, I think is important.
Dennis and Chris Williams, what do you like about seeing him so far?
Yeah, look, I think he's continued to improve. I mean, the fundamentals and the technique that we're teaching, I see him improving in those areas. And for a guy that's, a smaller bodied player inside, it's even more important, those fundamentals and technique, to be able to execute those at a high level. And so I've seen him, really take to the things that we're teaching in that regard. And so therefore I've seen him, continue to improve.
I know you don't have an update on Terrell, but what have you kind of gotten to know about him on and off the field in your months together here?
Well, look, obviously I thought he was making a lot of progress, in the injuries and unfortunate situation. But, he's a quiet guy, but he comes to work every day and does his job. And, so he's been good for us to work with.
What do you appreciate about the depth you guys have in that room? I know it's been tested a little the last couple of weeks, but it seems like
In the DB room?
yeah, in the corner, the corners especially.
Yeah. Well, look, number one, I think Al's done a great job with those corners, of getting them to play our style of defense. One of the things that we've done pretty well, I think our pass defense has been pretty good throughout the course of training camp, the preseason. And I've always said this, I told the players this today, the best example of team defense is pass defense, because one doesn't work without the other, so if we're not disrupting the timing of the routes, then it doesn't really matter how good our rush is. And then if we have a great rush, but yet we're not doing anything in terms of covering the guys, it's a challenge. So I think that works together. And look, depth is what you need in this league, because eventually, injuries happen in this league. And you're going to have to call upon some guys that are going to be backup players to have to come out and play at a starter's level. And so that's why we coach every single one of them the same way, from the top of the roster down to the bottom of the roster, because we're going to need all these guys.
Dennis, how did you develop your philosophy for rotation along with your pass rushers? Because I know there's always this expectation that star guys, the guys who are paid the most money, are going to be the ones who are out there on critical downs. But to keep, like you were saying, keep guys fresh, how did you develop that?
It just stands to reason that a fresh body is better than a tired body. I mean, it just is. I mean, you watch it, and so even though a guy may be, your best rusher, if he's played 7-8 snaps in a row rushing the quarterback, that takes a lot of energy, and so probably rush number 5 and 6, you don't see the same quality of rusher, and so if you get a fresh guy out there with speed and athleticism, it helps you in terms of your rush, and so having a deep defensive line group that can go rush the passer, you keep coming at them in waves, and typically offensive linemen don't rotate in and out, so when they play 5, 6, 7, 8 snaps in a row, they're not as fresh as they were to start the series, and you throw a fresh body out there, it's a different speed coming at them.
What are some of the difference? You have a reputation for an aggressive style, but from an X's and O's standpoint, what does that mean to you precisely?
Well, number one is this: it's a mentality, it's a mindset, it's a culture, and so I've said this 1,000 times. It's not about what we play; it's about how we play, and so it doesn't matter what the call is. It's about creating an aggressive mindset, and then you have to be able to execute whatever that call is within that same mindset. I think, we don't want to sit back and let the offense dictate to us. We want to try to dictate the terms to them, and continue to come after them and hopefully force them into mistakes. And I think, that's what the great offenses try to do to defenses. I think defenses have to do the same thing to the offense.
You mentioned the rotation with the pass rushers. Daniel Hardy's the guy that changed from linebacker to DN. What have you seen from him, and what does he have to do maybe in this last game to kind of join that rotation or at least challenge?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for him now, number one, is he's been exceptional around here on special teams. So everybody has to find what their role is going to be on this football team. So everybody's trying to make the 53-man roster. the 69 players, including the practice squad. But it's really about carving out your role or your niche, whatever that may be. It might be as a pass rusher, it might be as a special teams player, it might be, as a starter on the team. So everybody's trying to carve out their role. All those roles are important. And then at the end of the day, we got to try to find the right 53 for this football team that gives us the best opportunity to win, along with who are going to be the guys on the practice squad. Because again, just like I talked about, those guys are going to have to play for us at some point in time, and so we got to continue to develop those guys.